I'm here with Henna Inam. She is the CEO of Transformational Leadership. She's a speaker, she's a consultant, she's an author, she's a guru on transformational leadership, and she is really an expert on authenticity. So she has a new book out, and I want to talk a little bit more about authenticity. You talk about 7 practices of authenticity in your book. But before I go into the 7 practices, I'd love to just know a little bit more. Why is authenticity so important?
Yes. Thank you, Skip. And what I love about what you said is that I'm an expert in authenticity, and I will say that I'm a student of authenticity because it is something that I really truly believe is a practice. And it is something that I continue to grow and learn in every single day. The way that I define authenticity is it is really leading very adaptively from the core of who you are as a leader. And so there is an element of incredible flexibility and adaptability that I think is so important to authenticity today because we live in such changing times. And so it's about leading adaptively from the core of who you are. And I think the piece that is really important that has struck a lot of audiences as I get out and speak and write and talk about my book is authentic leadership is the full expression of me for the benefit of we.
Full expression of me for the benefit of we.
Yeah, and both are important.
Right.
You know, it's about full expression and it's in service of something bigger than me.
Well, you have these 7 practices,
right,
which are great, and we'll outline them. But is there one that more people struggle with than another, or is it just different?
Yeah, I think the one that a lot of people struggle with, and particularly leaders struggle with, one of the practices that I talk about is choose be before do. And I believe that so many of us, if you think about going to work, I'm on autopilot when I go to work. And I think when we go to work in terms of our leadership, we're on autopilot.
Right.
So much of our leadership action behaviors come from just, who we're being. It comes from our defaults, including many of the saboteurs that are in our head. Stress and fear and, what's going to happen to my job. No, I know you don't. I know you don't, but I do. And I think the choosing be before do is really taking that mindful moment and saying, who do I want to be in this interaction with Skip? Or who do I want to be in my next board meeting? Or who do I want to be when I have to have this really difficult feedback conversation with an employee of mine that I've been avoiding?
Right. Practice number 3 of letting go and that whole inner saboteur. I mean, I found that fascinating because all of us have these voices or, saboteurs kind of attacking us. Fascinating concept. How did you develop that, and what do people think about when they're looking at how do you help them identify their inner saboteur?
Yeah, so there, all of us have, everybody's heard of this notion of the inner critic. And we have these voices in our head that really drive a lot of our actions. And so we don't really pay attention to who we're being before we do something. And letting go is really the act of coming into your authentic self, being centered, and saying, now, I just need to let go of whether it's taking something personally or having a judgment against somebody, or even letting go of the tension that we feel in our body. So much of our leadership is impacted by the constant stress. Our nervous system is always on guard.
We're always wired too,
always,
right?
Yes.
We're always sort of messages.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, how do you let go of all of that? Step into your authentic and centered self so that you can make decisions more wisely in terms of who you're going to be and the impact that you're going to have on the people around you.
Well, another one I love is about facing the dragon.
Yeah.
And you talk about staying in your comfort zone has a price.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that, comfort zone and facing the dragon.
Yeah, so our facing the dragon, the practice of facing the dragon is really about facing your fears. And so many of us, when we give in to our fears, we actually are unable to be authentic. Because sometimes standing in our authenticity and doing the right thing, we have to overcome a lot of fears. We have to overcome the fears of being disliked or being the only person in the room that has a different point of view, but that is a point of view that needs to be heard. And so if we're going to have and be the full expression of ourselves, it is so important that we face up to our fears. And a lot of the practices that I talk about in the book are fairly integrated. In other words, you practice them, you learn them together. And
they are. I love the graphic too. They're so interconnected.
Yeah, they're all connected. And so the facing the dragon, the way to do that is to actually feel your fear, is to fully be aware of and feel your fear and discomfort. And a lot of us feel that discomfort in our body.
And stops us.
And that's exactly what happens, is it stops us. We want to just get away from that discomfort because our nervous system says fight or flight. And so we generally sort of flight or we fight. And none of those are the right responses because then we're not acting from our wisest self. And so facing the dragon is being able to breathe through the fear and just do it. Yeah, and train yourself to just do it and stay with the fear. And that's
great.
a wonderful practice because it's part of the befriending your body and learning how to manage yourself through your body and through your nervous system, because our nervous system is actually pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Much more powerful than we realize. Well, one of the things, you talk about these 7 practices, but some of your other work is on personal branding.
Mm-hmm.
And those are so interrelated, authenticity and personal branding. I'd love if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think there's so much noise out there about what a personal brand is. I think a lot of people believe your personal brand has to do with your job description, the career you're in. And the way that I describe personal branding and related to authenticity is it's actually related to the full expression of who you are. For the benefit of the people that you serve.
For the we.
Exactly, for the we. And so I describe your personal brand in 3 pillars. The first pillar is your leadership purpose. And it's really being kind of at the core of who you are. Mm-hmm. What is it that brings you joy that actually also serves other people around you? And that is a big part of leadership purpose. The second pillar is around your strengths. What are the gifts that you have that you really feel a lot of joy in bringing out and serving the world with? And the third is a set of values. So it's purpose, strengths, and values, and getting really curious, which is one of the practices. Staying curious is one of the practices, getting really curious about who you are as a leader and how do you want to serve the world in a way that truly brings you joy and energizes you.
What I love about everything, you could see the interplay, but what I love is about every answer is it's not personal branding for a business, for yourself, for self-promotion. Everything you just said was about service to others, and I just love that.
Yeah,
so,
You know, I think I'll tell you, being really transparent is one of my big saboteurs is high achiever. And it's all about, the fear of not achieving enough. One of the things that I've noticed in writing the book is I've noticed and become much more aware of when these saboteurs are showing up for me. And what I'm finding is it is so much easier for me when I am in a place of service to others and not thinking only about myself, that I'm actually able to be much more productive and much more authentic, rather than when I'm acting from a place of, high achieving and self-saboteur, self-focus or self-image.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because it's obvious, but who you are shows up authentically as serving others. So thank you so much. Thanks for spending a few minutes talking with me.
Thank you, Skip.